I call to order the Waverly City Council for February 2nd, 2015. Let us rise and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Let us pray. We pray this evening for those who need special assistance in big snowstorms, our neighbors, people cross town, people we know, people we need to care for, that this time of weather challenge can be an uplifting time of being Waverly and neighborhood. Amen. Is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda as distributed by our city clerk?
Move approval of the agenda.
Second.
Second.
Council discussion. All in favor signify with yes.
Yes. Yes.
Opposed with no, unanimously approved. Is there a motion to approve the January 17th budget study session minutes?
Move approval.
Second.
Second.
Council discussion. All in favor signify with yes.
Yes.
Opposed with no, unanimously approved. Is there a motion to approve the January 19th minutes?
Move approval.
Second.
Second.
Council discussion. All in favor signify with yes.
Yes. Yes.
Opposed with no, unanimously approved. Is there a motion to approve the January 24th budget study session minutes?
Move approval.
Second, please.
Second.
Council discussion. All in favor signify with yes.
Yes. Yes.
No, unanimously approved. Is there a motion to approve the January 26th minutes?
Move approval.
Second. Council discussion. All in favor signify with yes.
Yes.
This time, we have a guest council person of very much importance to us, Jeff Mick. He is someone that we look forward, many of us know him already. But Jeff, would you like to give a little bit of background to yourself as you enter into this month?
Okay, how much time do we have? I just was adding up. I've lived here, I think, 52 years. Grew up here, went to college up north to Luther, and here I came back here to Waverly. Worked in Waverly till about 15 years ago in a family clothing business. And I was talking to Chuck how our parents were friendly competitors back in the days, and then they got to be best friends. And then the last 15 years, I've worked at Simpson Furniture in Cedar Falls.
Great to have you this evening. We're also privileged to have at his first meeting, Dan Lampe. Dan, would you like to say a few words? It's just great to have you on board. It's great to have that seat filled, and we look forward to our time together.
Well, thank you. Like I said before, I'm thrilled and humbled that the citizens of Ward 1 chose me to represent them at the council. That's just I guess it's my hope that I can make that a good choice for them. So.
Thank you. Did I cut you off? I'm sorry.
No, you didn't.
Keep
I'm
going.
fine.
Okay, this is the time, date, and place for a public hearing about plans, specification, forms of contract, estimated costs for the West Bremer Avenue Sidewalk Extension Project, which extends along Bremwood Children's Home. The hearing is now open. I would invite any comments that anyone has on this wonderful development.
Dwayne Little Waverly. Question is, how wide will the sidewalk or the area that we're talking about, how wide will it be, and who will remove the snow off of it?
Okay, two good questions. I know it's 10 foot, but City Administrator, you want to talk about removal?
The removal will be done by LSI. So part of the engineering is working with Will at LSI and making sure they have the equipment to clear it and it's designed appropriately for that.
Okay. Any other questions? Any other comments? Hearing none, the public hearing is closed. A motion would be in order.
I'll move Resolution 1513 approving plans, specifications, form of contract, and estimated costs for the West Bramer Avenue sidewalk extension project.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and seconded. Council discussion.
Just a quick question, I guess. I think there's a couple historic signs for the campus there that may come into play here. Are we finding ways to work around that? And
I think you may be referring to the arch. Is that it?
yeah,
Yeah. And within the project, there are provisions for working around that. So Bramer Avenue's at the top here, and there's a set of steps that lead up from the curb. We're not real thrilled about having the steps there because it doesn't go to a pedestrian crossing, but they are somewhat historic. Most people probably don't realize that this section of Bremer Avenue was originally built as a divided two-lane with a boulevard going down the middle. And at some time in the past, I'm not sure exactly when, whether it was the 50s or 60s, the boulevard section was removed and it was filled in with concrete, and that's why those joint lines don't match up with the lane lines. The DOT wants us to work around the arch. It is in their right-of-way. But not everyone is of that opinion. So we're trying to balance the wishes of the facilities people at LSI as well as the DOT, and so at this point we're following the recommendation and direction of the DOT.
thank you.
Questions? Roll call vote, please.
Resnicek? Oh, sorry. Waldstein?
Yes.
Lampy?
Yes.
McKenzie?
Yes,
Gade?
Yes.
Nyendorf?
Yes.
Kangas?
Yes.
Resolution 15-13 is unanimously approved, 6-0. This is also the date, time, and place for a public hearing, approving plan specifications, forms of contract, estimated costs for the citywide pedestrian ramp construction 2015 project. Invite public comments at this time. Hearing no comments, I close the public hearing. A motion to be in order.
Move approval of Resolution 1514, approving plan specifications, form of contract, and estimated cost for the citywide pedestrian ramp construction 2015 project.
Second, please.
Second.
Council discussion.
This is the 5th of the 7 districts, is that correct?
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Generally north of Bremer from the river to Bremer Road on the east side.
Roll call vote, please.
Waldstein?
Yes.
McKenzie?
yes,
Nyendorf?
Yes.
Gade?
Yes.
Kangas?
Yes.
Lampy?
Yes.
Resolution 15-14 unanimously approved, 6-0. This is the date, time, and place for a public hearing approving plan specifications, form of contract, and estimated cost for the Dry Run Creek Improvement Project. Public comments at this time.
where the culverts go underneath Bremer Avenue, will there be one of the culverts that will allow the vehicles on the maintenance path to cross under Bremer Avenue from the north to the south or the south to the north?
We
You'd like
can
to
answer
respond?
that in the staff comment period. Mike will answer that.
Right now?
If, or he can do it after if there are more comments or questions.
Let's answer it right now while it's fresh.
No.
Okay. Any other public comments, please? Then motion be in order.
I'll move Resolution 1515, and approving plans, specifications, form of contract, and estimate costs for the Dry Run Creek Improvement Project.
Second, please.
Second.
Council discussion.
I know we talked about this some at the budget session because the estimates have come in over. We haven't bid for it yet, so we don't know the complete total cost, but, since the estimates have come in over budget, has there been any talk of, I mean, the first thing I would take out would be the maintenance trail that's 10-foot wide, paved, and save some money that way to lower the total cost of the project. You would still get the benefits of the flood and all that kind of things, but I don't know if there's been any discussions or thoughts of scaling it back that way without having any impact on the flood.
Yeah.
And then that's always something you can come back in and add at a later time when money allows, you know, that kind of thing.
Right, absolutely. Our first step is to see where the bids come in on Thursday. And because everything is broken out kind of item by item in that bid sheet, we'll be able to either have a better feel on where the market is for this project and the contractors think it will, or bid, not think, but bid that it'll come in. And then the next step after that would look at what, if we need to adjust the scale, how would we do that? Right now, we're showing at the high end, we're showing the bonds that it would take to do that. We talked about the debt levy rate as a total package. So at this point, we have not gone through to say, let's take out this or let's scale this back. It's been, okay, here's how we would meet it if it did cost us to do the total package once and for all.
Okay.
I think we talked maybe a month ago, I'm not very good with timelines, but I think we talked a while back about opportunity costs of doing some now, doing some later. And so I know we touched on that in the past, but our point now is to see what happens Thursday.
See what happens. And it could be something like the pool project where they are, since they will bid out, you'll know exactly what each thing is, and
Exactly.
we would maybe have to cut something.
We'll have a dollar cost on
We would
everything.
know exactly what that would be.
Yeah.
So, okay.
And the bid, the way the bids come in, we can chop out individual parts of it since it's itemized out like that.
That's probably more of a Mike question.
There, that has been done on other projects when it becomes absolutely necessary. There's two other components to this. One is our financing package. And when we had put this together over a year ago, the interest rate that we were anticipating or projecting was higher than the current interest rates that bonds are selling for today. So where we were showing over the life of the loans, potentially $1.9 million in interest costs, we're now down to projecting somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.4 million. The other side of this is the state funding. There may be an opportunity that if the project does come in over our original estimates, to be able to go back and request some additional funding for eligible expenses. So we're working with an estimated cost right now, and we'll know on Thursday where we're at. I would like to take an opportunity to kind of walk through the project. This is a very large project.
Isn't it one of our largest single dollar projects we've done?
Yes, in recent
anyway.
memory.
Yeah, in
yes,
recent
yeah.
memory.
So
Probably the biggest.
it's also going to be very visible and impact the public quite a bit. So let you get through your discussion at the right time, Mayor. I'd like an opportunity to take 10 to 15 minutes and kind of walk through the project.
Let's do it now.
Okay?
That would be fine with you.
This is part of Waverly's flood mitigation plan. Step one was to address the flood risk and potential from the Cedar River. This is what the flood map was like in 2008. And through the inflatable dam, which was literally about 98% federally funded, we were able to shrink the FEMA floodplain down to what we currently have here in the middle. We've successfully amended our FEMA floodplain map, and residents are already starting to benefit from those revised maps, and many have already been taken out. But we still have the potential for flooding on the Dry Run Creek corridor, and this project will address that and take an additional 300 homes and businesses out of the 100-year floodplain, which really starts to change the dynamics in some of the oldest, most historic sections of Waverly here. So the end result, we have submitted to FEMA a conditional letter of map revision, which they have supported, endorsed, and that upon completion of our project, we need to then document the as-built condition, and we're anticipating that the new 100-year floodplain for northwest, southwest Waverly will basically be shrunk down to the banks of the Dry Run Creek. This is accomplished by making the channel deeper and wider and removing the obstructions, which primarily are the existing box culverts. So the existing profile of the channel is shown here. The magenta color shows the new one, and for the most part, this is about a 2 to 3 foot deepening of the channel. The flood profile goes from the top blue down to this blue line here. So that's upwards of a 4-foot reduction in the 100-year floodwaters as we move down past Bremer Avenue, all the way down to First Street Southwest. In addition to making the channel deeper, we're going to make it wider, and whenever possible, we're going to use an earthen section, and all sections will have some type of a concrete pilot channel down the middle to help mitigate erosion and sedimentation concerns. Otherwise, with the earthen slope, it's readily maintained. We are looking at restoring it with native Iowa grasses and vegetation. The idea that it's going to have more of a feel like a meadow as opposed to an urban yard that's mowed to 2 to 3 inches tall. Want the grasses to be taller. Native grasses suitable for this situation will have a deeper root system, and when there are heavier flows of water, the grasses lay down, again helping to protect the soil. This is all factored into the hydraulic modeling that has been completed and accepted by FEMA. There are some sections of the corridor that are like along the business corridor or St. John's Church. So over by Quick Star, Subway, St. John's Church, we're coming out of box culverts, and it makes a lot of sense to maintain a walled section to minimize the footprint and impact of the corridor. So that's where we have a fully walled section, and I'll show you an example of what that looks like here in a little bit. These walls are going to be upwards of 9 feet tall. There will be a railing system up on top. And then in a couple shorter sections, We then have more of a hybrid combination between a short wall section and then transitioning into the earthen slope sections. Working from south to north, we've had to acquire some properties. We're going to be rebuilding, if my count's right, I believe it's a total of 9 box culverts. I think with 20th Street it might be 10 up along the corridor. The majority of these box culverts are going to be have 3. They refer to them as a triple box culvert. There's 3 tubes. Each section will be 10 feet wide, 7 feet tall. That's significantly larger than what we have on the majority of the Dry Run Creek corridor. The closest we come, I believe, is on the crossing at 4th Street Southwest and Bremer Avenue. I believe those are twin 10 by 6 box culverts. So a little bit taller, and then adding a 3rd unit to them. This project will also involve, with 4th Street being shut down due to the box culvert at this intersection, this is an opportune time while traffic is detoured to also go in and rebuild about a 2.5 block section of 4th Street Southwest. And then continuing on up north of Bremer Avenue, got a few more houses to acquire. And then up by Stratman's north of 5th Avenue Northwest, it doglegs to the left and will transition into the Dry Run Creek as it passes through the Wartburg property along the railroad tracks. So I talked a little bit about the walled section. This is a very important component. This is the one that was installed down by the bowling alley on 4th Street Southwest. This one is about 6 feet high, and I think it's in the neighborhood of 16 feet wide. So again, on the Dry Run Creek sections, we're going to have a total width of 25 and a height of 9 feet tall. The nice thing about using a modular block system is it's pretty easy to build and assemble using a skid loader that can lift them into place. What's important about these is they're extremely durable. You're not going to see someone trying to disassemble these by hand. The one that we did down by the bowling alley and then along 10th Avenue, each one of these block units weighs about 1.2 tons, over 2,000 pounds apiece. Talk about having a maintenance lane up on top. This is very similar to how we envision it being finished off. This is what we have on 10th Avenue Southwest. So we have our block wall, and then we have the maintenance lane next to it with a 42-inch tall vinyl coated chain link fence. On the other side, we will have something that looks very similar to this, except think of the sidewalk section here being about 2 feet wide with the fencing going along the top. That helps reduce the maintenance effort needed up and around the fence there, while still providing for a grass maintenance lane. Any questions at this point? Or I can keep going.
I'd have a question about the maintenance of the modular blocks.
Yes.
Well, just about, how often do they need to be, anything be done to them, and what are the costs of that?
The intent is No, that, this is something that's going to last for half a century. That's the goal and objective here.
Do you ever get, just a idle curiosity question, but do you ever get vegetation growing out of the face of that block or anything like that? Or does it fit tight enough to avoid that type of maintenance issue?
It's, it has a woven engineering fabric on the back side. It's got porous backfill for drainage, and it has edge drain down at the bottom as well. So if it does, it's going to be very minimal and readily treat it with some herbicide.
You want to talk about schedule?
Okay. I'm going to talk about, if you're ready to go on, I'm going to keep right on going. I'm going to talk about staging and scheduling. We have 6 stages of the project identified, starting out with the lower end of the project. We're going to allow them to basically close everything off downstream of 4th Street and 2nd Avenue Southwest and work on this entire section at one time. I anticipate that we will be working on multiple box culverts at one time. The way I describe this is, you need to think of this more as a marathon than a sprint. We want them to mobilize crews that once on site will be able to stay here and just kind of pace themselves and keep right on working. So like on this downstream end, there are 4 box culverts identified. In addition to that, we have a walled section along St. John's Church here. You're also seeing the extent of some roadway reconstruction. This is one item that kind of grew on us from the what we anticipated to begin with. And so again, you're able to see the extent of the roadway reconstruction work with this. As we progress up to the 4th Street corridor here, the work in yellow here is very time sensitive. That we are also going to be this summer rebuilding 2nd Avenue Southwest from 4th Street over to 10th Street in front of the hospital here. Mm-hmm. This project is set up and scheduled to be completed by mid-July. And what's critical about that time frame is we want paved and open to the public for Heritage Days, which is I think it's the 3rd weekend in July. Immediately following Heritage Days, we have the fair that runs for 9 days. This will not be shut down until the day after the fair. At that point then, they can close this section down of 4th Street. This is where we get into a bit of a sprint because they have to get that completed and open before the onset of winter. Now, when do we kind of look at the cutoff date? October 31st is really kind of the scheduled cutoff date. If you do the math, it's August, September, October. It's 3 months that 4th Street can be shut down. Don't anticipate it taking that long. But even if it's for 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks, you know, this is a major corridor for the community of Waverly. And it's going to be a major inconvenience and major disruption. We recognize that, we acknowledge that, and we're trying to complete this project in such a way that it can be done expediently but affordably. The detour route for the 4th Street traffic is set up to use 1st Street down to 5th Avenue. 5th Avenue is now going to have a box culvert. So we're going to eliminate the low water crossing and permanently install a box culvert at Fifth Avenue. And this becomes the designated detour route to get around the closure on 4th Street. Long-term, we anticipate that the Fifth Avenue intersection will eventually be signalized as well. That's been looked at, previously discussed as part of the corridor study from like 8th Avenue up to Bremer Avenue. That's the reason for the culvert being installed at 5th Avenue, is we see it as a change in the flow of traffic in this portion of the community, long-term. So while 4th Street's being worked on, we anticipate that they're also going to be working on this section up here. The contractor can also simultaneously be working on the piece down here and the stretch up through here. Additionally, if they can get this done, 4th Street being worked on, because much of this work, again, is being done by culvert contractors. Culvert contractors are going to complete the box culvert here, but they're not really going to be involved in the installation of the water main or the reconstruction of the roadway. They will want to jump north of Bremer Avenue to start working on that section going north. And that's where, you know, we talk about work possibly progressing through the winter, that they can, while 4th Street's being reconstructed, they can actually jump north of Bremer Avenue and start work there. The thing that they cannot do is they cannot work on Bremer Avenue until 2016. That's just not going to happen. But they can keep working up through here. We then want them to get 5th Avenue done, and then we talk about coming back down and working on Bremer Avenue. Bremer Avenue is very difficult to detour. So the idea here is that the box culvert is going to be built in halves. And not sure whether it's up to do the north half first or the south half first, but when doing that, we're going to go from 4 lanes of traffic down to 2 lanes of traffic and put them head to head. There is no official detour, but I'm sure that local residents will find alternative ways to get around. That's what's so important about having 1st Avenue Northwest and 5th Avenue Northwest rebuilt prior to Bremer Avenue being done. Now, I say 5th Avenue rebuilt, but the thing is they can't touch 5th Avenue while they're doing this project here, because we know that local traffic are going to be looking for alternative routes to get off of Bremer Avenue and avoid the congestion. This is another location that is going to take quite a bit of time. We have incentives and disincentives set up on this section as well. Again, this section and 4th Street, they're not marathons. We view these as sprints. And we've incentivized and disincentivized the completion of these 2 roadways because of the sheer volume of traffic that they carry and the impact to the community. This project is bid on Thursday. Things go well, things proceed well. Work will start as early as March 30th. And from there, it's probably going to take probably in the neighborhood of 15 to 18 months to complete. So that's going to take us into the summer of 2016. Questions?
Okay. Comments, council discussion.
Just make sure that, want to make sure that Chief Hoppel's been kind of brought into the conversation as far as the detour going down First Street. And it's sometimes tough enough to get through that intersection to respond to a call, but if it's becoming Fourth Street, I guess, want to make sure we know the timing and that type of thing.
Yep.
I guess my concern, my comment is to deal with the incentives and disincentives that you talked about, knowing kind of the struggle we went through this last year, and still haven't quite finished on the Parkway. Because this is such a large-scale project and going to disrupt a huge portion of our travel to the heart of the town, that is made, this is a priority and needs to be done within schedules.
Liquidated damages for Bremer Avenue and Fourth Street are $5,000 a day. There is an incentive of $3,000 a day on the project as well. So again, we view the value to the public of about $3,000 a day.
I think the other thing too is focused management of the project. We have that on all of our projects, but especially this one that touches a majority of the town and will look to most people like continual work for 18 months of just going into it, knowing the effort that will be put on it, kind of a full court press, is saying, get it done, keep it going. They'll get to know Mike and me well.
Yeah. Now, there is a cap on the incentive pay, so it's you're not going to be paying $200,000 in incentive pay. But the thing to keep in mind too is that when there are incentives and disincentives, is contractors factor those into the bids. Contractors that are slower, maybe not as organized, or don't have the same resources may factor in the disincentives and increase their bid accordingly. Those that are very efficient, well-organized, and have lots of resources to draw upon will actually factor incentive pay into their bid and lower their bid coming in. So those are things that kind of want you to keep in mind that come the end of the project, you know, contractors factor this stuff in.
Have we done that before on some projects, the incentive side of it?
I'm trying to recall, I think we may have. I don't think we ended up paying any incentive payout. Our public services facility was just bid with incentive, disincentive clauses. The cap on the incentive pay was 14 days at $2,000 a day. So the maximum we'd pay out would be $28,000 on that project. Again, good contractors build that in. Slower contractors that may not have the same resources may factor in the liquidated damages.
The comments.
The only other thing I noticed that I would want to bring up is that September, October, November 4th Street closure, it's, you know, not a big deal, but just to be aware of it, that, you know, I forget when Wartburg's Homecoming falls, where we have a lot of visitors during that time.
I'm hoping Phil will do a lot of work on the radio this summer.
I'll write your script.
No, public information campaign on all the work that's going on this year is going to be very critical, because there are going to be so many of our transportation corridors that are impacted that probably on a weekly basis we're going to be needing to do press releases to update the public.
Certainly during council, we can.
Yeah, during council.
update.
In the Fourth Street, that's not really part of this, I mean, that's a separate, well, that'll come to us with the design and stuff, and that's not part of this bid process, is it?
4th Street from Second to Bremer, since that's all gonna be torn up with the, box culvert is part of this bid process because they have to put that back. And so that will be basically, and you can show the picture, it's basically extending that left turn lane at 4th Street so that you get more flow in that area. But then 4th Street from Second down to 8th will be that's a separate project for the future.
'Cause I remember it's in the past, there's been some about what to do there with,
Burger King to Dairy Queen. Yeah.
yeah, with 3 lanes or 4 lanes or 2 lanes or whatever.
We're
It's just
building
extending
it
what's
as a
there.
3-lane corridor down through there. We get south of Second Avenue, we're gonna have transition back to the existing 2 lanes, but the intent is to continue with the 3-lane, extending all the way down, and that was part of a previous study that the council authorized and came back with, so.
We'll bring that back to a study session.
Yeah, it was 3 years ago, or yeah, I remember 2-3 years ago, I remember doing that.
And like what Mike was saying earlier, just with these, we have just a lot of projects over the next 2 summers, a lot of visible projects, and Bill and I were at a business meeting today, a company in town here that uses a lot of trucking, and so we're getting them on the list too, so they can have direct updates as far as logistics and impact to transportation and travel.
I mean, it's a great sign of progress to have projects going on, but they do need to be managed well.
Right.
It's not germane to this core project that you're talking about, or the city center, but you did mention it yourself, Mike, and I'm just curious, where does the 20th Street culvert fit in, time-wise?
Good question.
It'll be done mid to late summer.
Oh, okay, 15.
This year, yes. The cutoff date is to have it done before the horse sale in the
Okay.
fall.
More discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Lampy.
Yes.
Gade.
Yes.
Kangas.
Yes.
Waldstein.
Yes,
Neuendorf.
Yes,
McKenzie.
Yes.
Resolution 1515 unanimously approved, 6-0. Resolution 1516 is to approve asbestos testing and abatement services for our dry run project with Cardinal ATC. City Administrator, any comments?
Yes, Mayor, this is an addendum to the contract now that the testing is complete on 8 of the 9 properties. You can see that there are 5 properties that did come back with asbestos and need to be abated before demolition as part of this project. They're listed on page 4 of the attachment there, so council can see, ranging from $450 essentially up to $10,000. A total contract cost of about $22,000.
Formal motion to be in order.
I move resolution 1516 approving addendum 1 to the asbestos testing abatement services agreement for the Dry Run Creek Improvement Project for asbestos abatement services through Cardinal ATC of Waterloo, Iowa, in the amount of $21,965.
Second, please.
Second.
Motion seconded, council discussion. Roll call vote.
Neuendorf.
Yes.
Kangas.
Yes.
McKenzie.
Yes.
Waldstein.
yes,
Gade.
Yes.
Lampy.
Yes.
Resolution 15-16 unanimously approved, 6-0. This is also the time, date, and place for a public hearing approving plan specifications, forms of contract, and estimated costs for the 2nd Street Northwest area storm sewer and street improvement project. Comments from the public at this time would be welcomed.
This project's come about as a result of a project for the church. We abandoned the street, the church bought the street, they're building across it, and we had an easement for a storm sewer in that street. Now we're moving the storm sewer to 2nd Street, down to First Avenue and then to the river. We're spending $750,000 for a project that will generate zero tax dollars. We're replacing it with what looks to be a complete street reconstruction, whereas in other parts of the town, when we tear up a storm drain or a water main, we seal coat that street. I'm curious as to why we're spending so much money to do a street improvement for just that area. It's a very low traffic area, and why we aren't seal coating that. And why are we paying for moving the storm drain? All of it, not just the increase in sizing, but we're paying for all the movement of the storm drain. Why aren't we just paying for the increase in the size, and why aren't we seal coating the street?
Thank you. This is an old discussion, but I'm going to ask the city administrator if he'd like to readdress it one more time.
Yep, council may recall we've addressed many of these and had some pictures, and I think Mike probably has some more. So, yes, relocating the storm sewer that went under, but we're also upsizing the storm sewer in that whole area to basically take care of the runoff from between the river to the dry run. There have been some pinch points in the area, I believe, as far as storm sewers go in the past, and so it's not just moving, it's also upsizing kind of area with a history of problems. The other item is, and you may recall a picture of Mike holding a straight edge, or basically a surveyor's rod out there showing the crown of that street and how far down it is on the edges compared to the height in the middle. And that's really the reason we're not just doing a simple kind of open trench cut and patch back, is because of the crown and where there is traffic because of St. Paul's School there. Cars can get high-centered on that street as it is now. So, Mike, do you want to go into the details on those three items?
Well, you did a fine job there.
I read.
Yeah, the history of this goes back to 2008, when St. Paul's Church approached P&Z and City Council about future building plans, expansion plans, and the desire to vacate Second Avenue Southwest to allow for them to connect the church and school together. So P&Z and the City Council agreed to that. City Council entered into an agreement with St. Paul's Church in 2008 for the vacation of that, knowing that at some point in the future, when building plans would materialize, that we would need to relocate that. In effect, they're responsible for rerouting the 24-inch sewer. What the city has a need for and a desire to do is increase the capacity of the drainage system that services that area and everything to the west and north for quite some distance. Modeling has shown that much of the system there is only sized to be able to take about a 2-year rain event. Some areas appear to be even worse than that. We have some areas up on that seem to be problematic up at Fifth Avenue and, is it 2nd Street or 3rd Street, Brian? Do you recall?
5th and 3rd that flood.
5th and 3rd that tends to flood out more often, and some other areas. So this has been in the works for quite some time. It was incorporated into the dam reconstruction project that we did to upsize much of the storm sewer in Coleman Park that outlets just below the dam in anticipation of this future project. At the time, we simply didn't know when it was going to occur. It was kind of in St. Paul's court, and they pulled the trigger on a building project about a year ago. So that's when we started looking at incorporating, completing the work, and partnering with them. The city is not paying for 100% of the cost. St. Paul's Church, and this is council approved when we entered into a development agreement, which was May 19th of 2014. They're going to contribute up to just over $100,000 in eligible costs. This project, because the pipe is so large and so deep, basically results in the removal of the entire street. In addition to that, we are taking this opportunity to replace a 4-inch water main with a new 8-inch main. This is the main that primarily services the church and school for their fire protection. So there is multiple needs being addressed here with the replacement of undersized water main, undersized storm sewer, and doing so, taking this opportunity to also rebuild the street because there won't be anything left of the street.
Thorough, thank you.
Now,
Oh, yes.
I'll let you continue through discussion, and if you want, I'd like to expand the discussion a little bit to talk about what we're doing in the time frame involved as well.
Okay, we can do that in council discussion. Any more public comments? It's a public hearing, public comments. Hearing none, I would close the hearing and ask for a motion.
Move Resolution 1517 approving plan specifications, form of contract, and estimate costs for Second Street Northwest area storm sewer and street improvement project.
Second, please.
Second.
Council discussion. Now we can address Mike.
So Second Street, it's almost, pretty much 2 full blocks that you'll be reconstructing.
That's correct.
The one right in front of the school and then in front of the church, that those 2? On both
Correct,
sides
and
of the
then
intersect-
all the way down to Bremer Avenue.
Oh, okay, yep, okay. Can you make it any wider?
Make it a 3-lane.
Actually,
That's where the
we,
school is, anyway.
we are. We're, the plan is,
I know, that'll help, any little bit will
I'll
help. right?
let you continue with your discussion, then I'll,
No, this is council discussion with you.
All right.
Thank you.
At least between 8:15 and 8:25.
yeah, turn it this way, because up is always north. We are looking at making one section a little bit wider coming up along the school here. And this is where there's the diagonal parking. And if any of you have ever done it, it's like down and straight up again. And so we're going to look at widening this section through here so it resembles more of what we have on First Avenue, First Avenue Northwest. Which has the diagonal parking along the south side. Okay?
Oh, yeah, okay, cool.
I'm going to move right on into talking a little bit about scheduling on this.
Fine.
This project is very time sensitive. This one is a flat-out sprint to get done while school is in summer recess. This has a tremendous amount of underground utility work to complete in a very short period of time. We've got about 1,000 feet of water main to put in, and we have to do it while maintaining service to the existing businesses and homes. There's like 16 water services that we have to make accommodations for. So the plan here is to start at Bremer Avenue, and we're going to have to close the outside lane for maybe upwards of a couple weeks. Hopefully it'll be less than that. If y'all remember what was done over by the Bremer County Museum at 4th Street, it's going to be very similar to where they have to barricade things off. Now, I'm hoping that it's going to go much quicker and will look a lot more like what they did for the new hotel that's being built, where they bored underneath and they had to create another pit on the other side, but they had to use the concrete barriers to go around to protect the work zone area. That's what we're doing here. That's what we're starting out with, coming off of Bremer Avenue. We have to get into that parking lane. We have to tap into the existing main. We have to disconnect the old main at that time, and then we're going to move away from there, get backfilled, get patched, and get traffic restored as quickly as possible. So the new water main is going to be installed just to the east of the existing water main while we keep the existing one in service. They get installed, they get it put into service, and then we come back and we switch all the services over. The storm sewer, we have an existing storm sewer system from First Avenue up to Third Avenue, and we're going to be bringing it in from over by Coleman Park and redirecting it and rerouting it. The piece over at Coleman Park here, we have specified to be completed before June. So we anticipate that they're probably going to want to do the work in May so that they only mobilize once to get on site, and that there is probably almost a month's worth of work to be done over here in Coleman Park. We've got a very large sewer system that's storm sewer system that's going to be in conflict with water main, with sanitary sewer, and it's going to be very slow going to get the work done in this area here and then brought across. We have storm sewer structures. The one just inside First Street here is going to be 48 inches wide, 9 feet long. The one in Coleman Park here is 6 feet wide, 9 feet long. These are very large structures, upwards of 12 to 15 feet deep in the ground. What we're doing is we're installing, this is that 36-inch storm sewer line that was outlets below the dam. We have to redo a short section of that, come into this structure, and then we're going to go underneath the sanitary sewer with 2 storm sewers. So we have to get underneath an existing 24-inch sanitary sewer. So we're putting in twin 30-inch storm sewers, getting into this box here, and then we're transitioning into the 48-inch diameter storm sewer that will continue down First Avenue, turn the corner at 2nd Street, and continue on up to 3rd Avenue. So this is somewhat of a delicate project. Staging, phasing, coordination is going to be very important. When First Street is closed, traffic will be detoured down 4th Street to 5th Avenue and then back over to First Street. So we're going to have to, accommodate this section of the roadway gets about 5,000 vehicles a day. It's also the primary route for trucks going to Nestle. So these are accommodations that we're attempting to make, coordinate, and try to, within reason, minimize the impact to the public while at the same time managing our costs and constructability.
Did you talk about the timing on the Coleman First Street work in May? I might have just missed it.
Yeah, that this work has to be done before June. So we're providing the contractor some flexibility, but we're estimating that there could be upwards of a month's worth of work, so we anticipate them probably coming on site first part of May.
More discussion?
Okay. There's 2 enormous trees that we're going to attempt to thread a needle through. They're the 2 cottonwoods right here and over here. We're going to make every attempt to preserve those. But until we start excavating through there, we're not sure to what extent we're going to be impacting the root system. If the root system is, major root systems are compromised, the concern is that the tree could be a hazard during a strong wind. So it may become necessary for safety reasons to ultimately take the trees out. The one that's of greatest concern that we're closest to is the bigger of the two on the south side of the intersection. That decision won't be made until we get the storm sewer installed.
Any more questions? Mike, thank you, Mike, for a lot of information. Roll call vote.
Gade,
Yes.
Niendorf,
Yes.
McKenzie,
Yes.
Lampy,
Yes.
Kangas,
Yes.
Waldstein.
Yes.
Resolution 15-17, unanimously approved. This is the time, date, and place for a public hearing approving plan specifications, form of contract, and estimated cost for the Waverly Dog Park fencing project. Comments would be invited from the public. Mr. Weigel.
Mayor, Council, Derek Weigel, City Ward 1. Just like to take a quick second and thank Mr. Lampy for running and then also congratulate him on his win. And as we all know, the sacrifice it takes to be here every Monday night, it's sometimes difficult. So, but with that, I don't really have anything on the design. I think Tab and Nikki Welch have been doing a great job as far as planning and organizing. It's more about addressing the council in that the funding that we have for this project has been 100% donated or accomplished by the community in that we won the $100,000 dog park. Talking with Tab, it sounds like, the bidding's coming up soon, but they may come into some issues with funding as far as quality of fencing, whether it be coated or not coated. And I guess that's really what I wanted to talk about, and from my perspective, and also I think the many followers and supporters we have of it would agree that fencing is a structural thing and that it's going to be there for hopefully forever. And we shouldn't cut costs now on that. That being said, I understand that we only have $117,000. But I also know that we have a very generous city council. And, I would just like the council to keep in mind that this is a project that has been supported by hundreds, if not thousands of people in and around our community. And if the time does come to where we have to decide between a lesser product in the vision and the view of our dog park or a better product and maybe having to spend a little more money, I would ask that you take a look at helping the dog park out and supporting them again in the construction for it. Obviously, we don't know the overall cost. It could be less than the bids are estimated. It could be more. But I definitely think that the aesthetically pleasing factor and the overall condition of the fence in years to come should be taken into account here. And that's all I have.
Thank you, good comment. Other comments from the public? Hearing none, I close the hearing. Motion to be in order.
I move Resolution 1518 approving plans, specifications, form of contract, and estimated cost for the Waverly Dog Park fencing project.
Second, please.
Second.
Council discussion.
Another one, we just wait to see what the bids come in.
Nope.
I think, Mike, do you have a estimate on the difference in pricing?
I don't. I don't have a good source to get a current figure. I've got stuff from like 5 years ago, and I just don't feel comfortable.
Just for comparison.
But, yeah, we're looking at the chain link fencing. Let's see here.
52.
We've got a little over 2,600 feet, about half a mile or so. And, you know, if it's for every $5 a lineal foot, it's going to be like an additional $13,000. So I guess we'll just have to see where it's at. I mean, the considerations are that the galvanized fence is a good durable fence. Certainly a vinyl coated or plastic coated is more aesthetic. I guess I'll leave it up to the committee and the council to decide, you know, where the resources and priorities go.
Do you have any idea of the difference in service life between the galvanized and the? about the
None.
same? None?
Yeah, same. It's more of an aesthetic.
Just,
Other questions? Roll call vote, please.
Waldstein.
Yes.
Lampy.
yes.
Kangas.
Yes.
McKenzie.
Yes.
Nyendorf.
Yes.
Gade.
Yes.
Resolution 15-18 is unanimously approved, 6-0. This time, I invite any comments by the public on any items that are not on tonight's agenda. Public comments.
Brian Sullivan, Public Services Superintendent, City of Waverly. I just want to remind the citizens to make sure that they get their garbage and recycling out by 7 a.m. on the day of their pickup. We've been running into a few problems here lately of people bringing it out after the truck goes by. So just want to remind people, get it out by 7 a.m. on the day of your pickup. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a singular request, easy to remember, public. Any other public comments? Anything not on tonight's agenda? Then we look to our consent calendar. We have 3 items. They are a pay request from VJ Engineering for 2nd Street Northwest Storm Sewer improvements. We have a pay request from ACOM for GTM Railroad Spur Line, and we have McClure Engineering wanting to be paid for runway rehab design and bidding services. Is there a motion?
Move approval of the consent calendar?
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and seconded. All in favor signify with yes.
Yes.
Opposed with no. Our consent calendar is unanimously approved. Regular business item number 1 is a resolve to approve the bridge inspections with WHKS and Company. City Administrator, any comments before we motion?
This is our standard bridge inspections. I believe most bridges are inspected every 2 years. We have 2 bridges that are inspected. Actually, the Green Bridge now is inspected annually just because of its age and condition. So that's an extra safety precaution in partnership with WHKS and the city.
And the trails, bridges?
This includes the rail trail bridges, yes.
Okay,
Adams Parkway Bridge.
thank you. Formal motion.
I move resolution 1519 approving the professional services agreement with WHKS and Company for the 2015 bridge inspections for $7,700.
Is there a second?
Second.
Council discussion?
I have a question. How much cost does it add to to have the Green Bridge inspected annually?
How much additional cost is it? I want to say it's in the neighborhood of $1,500 every time they come down to do the inspection.
Thanks.
So it's possible they could inspect it and say what? Should be driving on it? I mean, that could always happen, right?
That can happen. In their professional judgment, they got to the point where they didn't feel comfortable doing it every 2 years. That their recommendation is to have it inspected annually now.
The other thing they can do is they can adjust the weight limits on there. Currently, it's a 5-ton bridge.
About as low as you can really go.
Yeah, next will be, 500 pounds, but smart cars or something.
More discussion? Public input before we vote? Roll call vote, please.
McKenzie,
Yes.
Angus,
Yes.
Lampy,
Yes.
Niendorf.
Yes.
Waldstein.
Yes.
Gade.
Yes.
Resolution 15-19 unanimously approved, 6-0. Regular business item number 2 is a budget discussion of other contributions, our capital projects, solid waste, airport, and self-funds, and then the setting of February 16th as our public hearing date to review the 2015-16 budget. City Administrator will now lead our budget discussion.
All right, thank you, Mayor. We'll just keep going here. As far as other contributions, we don't have any changes tonight. It was just a reminder that we had put in the additional $3,000 for Heritage Days. We had put in the budget the $50,000 for AMVETS from the W Reserve account. And then the rest of the amounts we had left consistent with last year's funding, with the notion that we'll come back at a study session to really discuss where we want to be as a city as far as funding human services organizations beyond what we do now. So that was just kind of a reminder there. Capital projects, we'll just start off there where we left. You have in front of you a white sheet. I know you have your notes too. I apologize to the TV room. I don't have my wireless mic tonight, so this will be kind of in and out. But really, we can walk through these and show, just really talk about some changes from last year. As you guys may recall, we have accounts for most of our capital projects. And the one account that we talk a lot about is this Fund 320. And what it is a place where we do a lot of our smaller projects that we don't go out and necessarily issue bonds for or have large funds for. They might be a one-time project or a small annual project. The interesting thing about this account is that a vast majority of the money comes from contribution from the Waverly Light and Power. And so you can see here that about a little over $250,000 comes in as a transfer. We have a small amount, some might even say paltry amount of interest revenues. And then this year, that $50,000 is basically what was left of the $150,000 where we transferred annually to recreation programming at the W. We took $100,000 of that $150 away just as budget savings, and we transferred in $50 to add a little bit of city dollars to this account so we could have some bit of a buffer, quite frankly, when it comes to capital improvements. If you look at the expenditures down below, you can kind of just work back and forth and see what we have listed here. The first thing in 2015-16 is year 2 of the purchase agreement with Stuart Mackey. That's the land on the east side of the river where Cedar River Parkway Bridge will connect. And that was a good partnership that Bill worked there to kind of good timing and a good project for everybody. Next, there you see $20,000, and that is a placeholder for a energy enhancement project through this community energy management program that we're doing with the State Economic Development Authority. We talked a little bit about that in the past, and so this would be like a lighting retrofit or HVAC upgrades or building envelope upgrades to really be able to invest in a building and then track that through the program that we're doing with them. $5,000 for downtown lights, and I think, Jack, remind me what that goes for. Holiday lights. So a little bit of holiday spirit. $12,000 for capital equipment for the library. They have some needs for tables, software for managing the collections, and some work on the brick facade. The $120,000 here is for the golf course pond project. You recall that we're going to rebid that, and we added a little bit to it to make sure that we had the right budget for the scope of that project. $10,000 is for our financial. We do an annual contract with Public Financial Management, and they update the debt planning models that we've gone through and the property tax models and projections there, so we have those numbers to base our budget on. Then we have a server upgrade. We're going to be upgrading from Exchange 2003. So we will be on the most recent cutting edge of technology. I'm not actually kidding. We will be upgrading from Exchange 03 because it won't not, they quit supporting it in like 2012. So
Years ago.
So we'll be there. We don't want to get too far out on technology. You know, you never know where it's going to go. I mean, what is that at sign anyway? Is that a round or?
Nothing's changed.
No, it's all the same. We have the $25,000 in there for the pedestrian crossings, and I just received a phone call the other day suggesting that a good location for that might be 4th Street and East Bremer where the rail trail crosses there. There's no signal there right now, but that's a heavy area. We've also talked about 8th Street by Duos, and then long range, a whole kind of rework of the intersection by where Chris is at 20th and Redeemer Church area. You can see that we do a $35,000 annual transfer to the capital equipment fire reserve for our next fire apparatus purchase, so we have a savings account there. We used to do the same with ambulance, but that's out of local option sales tax now. And then we have a few transfers down at the bottom. One is the Babcock Trail project that'll be kicking off this year, and then the City Bridge project, which is the Green Bridge Fund. So overall, we have about $337,000 in. Right now, budgeted about $330,000 out, which leaves us with a net fund of $7,000 or $8,000, and that gives us a little bit of a cash balance. Sorry, I'm not following along. A little bit of a cash balance of about $28,000. So that cash balance, it's handy to have, but it also allows us, if there's a small project or another priority that comes up, we have a little bit of wiggle room with that or programming flexibility. We don't care to use the whole cash balance, but like I said, it does give us a little bit of a opportunity if we need to.
Phil, just a quick question, make sure I understand correctly. The transfer in from Waverly Light and Power, sometimes we get questioned, well, if they didn't do that, our rates would be a little lower, but that's, I've heard it referred to as in lieu of taxes, in lieu of property taxes type things. So
That's
if you can kind of make sure I'm thinking of it correctly. And
yes, so there's a few different kind of transfers from Light and Power. One is basically billing for billing services, and so they pay us to run all of their billing. They pay us for supplies, they pay us for our time, because as we've talked about in the past, everyone gets a combined bill: water, sewer, solid waste, and electric. So that's some of the money that comes over. But this money is we call it a pilot or a payment in lieu of tax. And so I forget all the amounts, but it's basically about a 4 to 5% transfer on their gross revenues, just like we do with Comcast, Mediacom. And so it's basically saying, well, one, there's a little bit of return on investment to the citizens who bought the utility, and two, it's not paying taxes, but it's using public rights of way and everywhere else, so that's where the pilot comes in. And it's very common on utilities to have that. Otherwise, it would be like a franchise fee. Any other questions on this? I know it's a quick rundown, not a lot of things in here, but just a few.
The transfer to projects, you said the $20,000. Did you say something about the Green Bridge there?
Yep, and we'll go into that. We have a fund that's dedicated for, it's called the City Bridge Fund, but it's more commonly known as kind of the Green Bridge Fund, and we've talked about it. I remember my first budget here, we were talking about what to do with that, and we'll get into that because there's some money in there, but it's not quite enough to do an overall project or build something as a replacement. And that's something where it could be a question, do we want to continue to do that? I'm sorry, Chris.
No, I didn't know. I didn't know you were done. Keep finishing.
There could be a question as to, do we want to keep transferring that $20,000 every year into that fund, knowing right now it's kind of a little bit in kind of purgatory. There's not enough to do anything, but there's enough in there to do small little upgrade projects.
So the idea is, I mean, is that fund, is the idea for that fund to really look to the future of the Green Bridge in a different format, or is it more maintenance-based, or both?
That is probably a good Jack and Mike question.
I think it originally was set up, was money set aside hoping to redo the bridge, paint the bridge, that type of a thing. But then when we found out what it was gonna cost to paint the bridge or redo it, it just got into more of a maintenance type.
But $20,000 gets added every year?
It has been for the last, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years, something like that.
So what's in the fund currently, roughly?
The current amount, I think it's around 114. Let's see. Okay.
It's actually at the end of 16, the end of next fiscal year, it'd be 144,000.
144.
Thank you.
That would have been, if, I remember, what was it, a couple years ago, we put the rubber in between to
Yep.
widen it down, those kind of
Yeah,
things money
that
was
type
used
of-
to- those kind of maintenance things.
It's that type of project, you know, working on the fencing there on the pedestrian side, or working on those sidewalk panels, or replacing a sign, because I think, Mike, what was a estimate to coat the bridge or repaint the bridge? Was it $500,000 for painting? And so you're looking at a 100-year-old bridge, almost, a 98-year-old bridge. You put $500,000 into the repainting, but that doesn't do anything for the weight restrictions or the use. And so that's one of those where, do you keep putting aside a little bit of money that's probably not going to really amount to anything each year, or do you try to vision, is it going to, how will its next phase of its life be, and then what will it take to do a bridge there or somewhere else? Because I think the Janesville pedestrian bridge was over $1 million for that project, wasn't it?
Sounds about right.
That they just put in there, that single span. So, I mean, once you start getting into it, it's really big numbers, and we're not there. And so the question is, should we keep transferring this money, or is it time to think about something else?
I think that's a good question.
Seems to me, though, that a bridge of this age is, in the larger scheme of things, a fairly young bridge. It's got the character. If we get into impossible financial situation, it's a different picture, but it would be my hope that we could continue to load up that fund and keep and hope that maybe we could match it sometime with maybe some state money for bridge work, that there'll be some opportunities that our city engineer might be able to enable, and that a key part of Waverly can be maintained. If we lose all of our character, we've lost a lot. So it might get impossible, but I would hope that we would consider at least maintaining the building up of that fund.
I guess I would just say that, I mean, it's not an insignificant amount of money that's in that fund, and I don't disagree, Mayor, necessarily with keeping it. I don't have a position on it right now, but it seems to me it ought to be something that we be thinking about now and talking about now, and getting some real numbers to look at and some possible alternatives, whether that's to keep it or not. But I think just, you know, keep funding something with the hope that something will work out in the future isn't specific enough for me.
One of the things that we might do, good thing about the budget is we come up with study session items for the rest of the year. I think it would be helpful, because I know I haven't in my 2 years gone through the whole study and process and evaluation that was done of the bridge with alternatives. How many years ago is that now? 5 or 6?
5 years ago or so, yeah.
Yeah, it was longer.
It seems like 5 is when they had the big talk
Discussion.
of building a whole new 200-year flood bridge over the top.
And so, you know, sometimes it's just good to start with the history and where have we come from, and what was decided and why at the time, and what alternatives exist. Because I know the state is interested in that bridge too, as far as funding opportunities for a new bridge or a replacement bridge. And the question really comes is that the right place? Is it downriver? Is it pedestrian? Is it everything? And so I think for us, again, kind of once bitten, twice shy. I think once my first year, I recommended taking the money out of there and putting it somewhere else, and not doing that. And at the time, Mayor Pro Tem Borum did not think that was a good idea. And so that's why it is what it is. But we're happy to schedule it as for a more formal discussion.
Yeah, I understand the sentimental attachment to it. I don't think it's the only thing that gives Waverly character, by the way, but I certainly understand that it contributes to it. But it seems to me that it's at a point in terms of dollar amount that we should be very intentionally looking to the future and looking at all of the different options. I'm not advocating one way or the other, but I think I like the idea of targeting it as a study session topic.
I think just the extension of 10th Avenue may change some of those things too, because now that neighborhood or that area has another way in and out, so.
Obviously, there's some areas of concern with the inspections on that bridge. Is that, you have any idea what those areas of concern are that they made it, may feel that it's necessary to inspect yearly rather than bi-yearly?
One area of significant concern is the gusset plates that, where all the members come together, they have gusset plates that connect them together. Floor beams are another concern. The piers, abutments, the concrete work, another concern, so.
Yeah, I've got a fairly good working knowledge of what's going on there, since it's in my backyard, but, yeah, the concrete is flaking away quite a bit, and I don't know that, I'm not familiar with the cost to redo that or to replace, but I have to believe it'd be quite high.
Yeah, I just remember from the talks and like what Dan was saying, the talks 5-6 years ago, when the plan was to look at tearing it down and building a new one, it was gonna be so high, and then, houses on each side were gonna have to be taken away. And that's kind of how the whole talk of 10th Avenue and the bridge, where it's gonna go now, got to be placed, because that neighborhood didn't want that to be a truck bridge, and a high-traffic bridge is more just for neighborhood traffic. And now with 10th Avenue going, and that they can get out that way and get over the Cedar that way, it serves its purpose as a little neighborhood bridge, so.
I think the main thing from our point of view as staff is just saying, what's the plan for the time when the bridge inspections come back and say, you're done?
Right.
No more, unless you inject either a whole bunch of cash into it in time, or we don't want to be caught flat-footed without a plan.
I agree.
To say, okay, then can we transition it cost effectively to a pedestrian bridge? And can we do that for the time being? And how many years will that get us? So I think that's kind of our view on it is, what are our options if we get a unsatisfactory report someday?
I had to, from the
Yep.
list of projects, just something maybe to talk about at a later date, the citywide server upgrade. I think I'd like to maybe look at some other options, like going to the cloud, instead of maybe having server hardware local. Explore that option as well, like an Office 365 type solution. We're looking at that a little bit at work, and it might save some costs down the road and more reliable, especially for all our stuff we have to keep. And then I guess I too would like to talk about the crosswalk lights at some point, about what is the right project to do this year.
I think that's been, that's a good discussion, because right now we don't really have a preference or a thought on that, other than knowing that we can put one in this budget, and then, as Mike talked about a while back, we have a pretty big Bremer Avenue not reconstruction. Rehab project. That would be another time to put some more into that project, knowing that the parking lane, the whole street's gonna be redone, curb to curb, including our areas, which are the parking lanes. So I think it would be good to pick a spot and then evaluate that and see how it works, and then see if there would be another spot to add in with the project. So,
Yep, yeah, it's something I like to talk about. Just, of course, I'm always talked about the one at Redeemer there, especially now we're putting in a LSI's putting in the sidewalk there. But-
I hear about that one too. every once in a while.
Yeah, no, we've had people at council talk to us about that too.
And crossing on the bike trail that is diagonal. It shouldn't really cross the road diagonal, but you can, especially on a bike, you can just go half block down to the controlled light, which is
Right.
what people do. So, and I was thinking more, when we do the rehab, that might be a time for
Place
that
to
one
put that
personally.
one.
But yeah, I think we should discuss.
Kind of the merits of location.
Yeah, but
In terms of the server, to follow up on Chris's suggestion there, if we were to evaluate cloud and other options in place of the server, replacing the server, is that something we would need to bring a consultant in for to even do the evaluation of what might be best for us, or do we have enough expertise in-house to do that?
Our IT work is done on a contractual basis with networking solutions. And so they would be the ones we would probably talk with as far as pros and cons. How is this working in other local government levels with essentially 70 to 100 accounts? How would it integrate with ours? We have virtualized a few of our servers, and so that has helped. And I think this is more of the Exchange server, so it would be something we're looking at an office.
even maybe broach something with the county.
As a shared.
I don't know if other places do that, but it's just a shared type domain type thing. But I don't know what they use for technology, but
And to talk to Network Solutions about that would be within the scope of what we are already paying them.
That's a good question. I don't know. I think it would probably be within the scope of discussing this server replacement and say, as we talk about
Sure.
specifications and what makes sense.
But not other alternatives necessarily.
right, yeah. I mean, you could even you could just do email, and you wouldn't even. I was thinking more broad, but you could even just put your Exchange server in the cloud, and not even have to deal with something here locally.
Right, right. Yep, software as a service type or
Yep.
hardware as a service.
Yeah, I think your prices would be. I don't know what that cost is, but I think it wouldn't be like that much. I don't know. But, yeah, I'm done.
All right, real quickly, I'll go through some of our project accounts just to get an update. And these are all reviewed project by project. Like a lot of things we do in budget, we're putting it in as a placeholder, we're putting it as a dollar amount, but you actually approve the project as we go forward, and you approve the amounts when we get to the project or the item. Let's see. And I know I've received a few comments that the colors aren't always the easiest to see on the screen. Thank you for that feedback, Pete. So next time we'll just try to do all white. 20th Street Culvert, we just talked about this a little bit. This is part of the Dry Run Creek, and so we're glad to be able to address this need for that part of town this summer and fit that into one project. And so that's going to be upcoming. Sidewalk program, I just wanted to show that we've talked about bonds and fitting it in. Again, it kind of depends on where we are with the Dry Run Creek costs. We can do some bonds for a couple of years and just use some cash to offset that debt service. But right now, we're showing we have a transfer from some bond proceeds from last year that went unused to kind of bridge us in the sidewalk so that we don't have to necessarily stop the program, so that we gets us a little further down the road. And we're trying really hard to keep in that 7-year rotation. And then we talked about the dry run, just showing here, zoom out a little bit, planning that zero cash balance at the end of 16, just showing where we are going to be with bonds in versus expenses and trying to get the dollars out just as fast so we can get this project done. Babcock Woods, and these are all in your 3-ring binder, but Babcock Woods is going to be a project this summer, and so we're showing that to be a zero account because we'll spend that down. Same way with AMVETS, we got our REAP grant there so that we could purchase that final portion of property and get that all restored with the natural stone and the the native grasses. Champions Ridge, the thing to think about with this is they're still moving forward with this project and actively working on it. We have contributed financially to the purchase of Phase 1. We have talked about working with them on sewer serving the site, and also we have that option in a few years for the north part of the 60-some acres of the farm that's left. So that's something to think about there. Shades of Rhythm Amphitheater, the thing I want to note here, even though the project's done, we have that $17,000 maintenance account, so things like little fix-it projects or wood sealer or things like that can come from that account. Second Street, and just speak up anytime if you want me to stop. I know we're kind of going through it, but
Just one, back on the Champions Ridge.
yes.
You were, unless I didn't understand it, it doesn't show the next payment coming in from the Fair Board on the revenue side.
Right, we should probably update it with that.
Just don't want them to think that we've forgotten about it.
How much
We
was
are
that?
fully counting on that payment, just for the record.
And how much was that?
Well, it was $30,000.
Okay.
The big check or the little check? No. Second Street Northwest. Here, again, this is the project we just talked about. So we're showing in the transfers using local option sales tax, a little bit of TIF, and then contributions from St. Paul. And then we also have money from the water fund, as Mike talked about. We're doing that water line there in Second Street, upsizing that from a 4-inch to an 8-inch. This pass-through fund, this is where we had some cash balance in there from some bond proceeds. And so that's money that we're proposing to put into the sidewalk fund for now, to use that towards keeping that program going, especially in the event that we don't have the capacity to issue bonds for a year or two. Housing rehab, it's zeros now, but the reason I want to talk about this is that with the Dry Run Creek pulling homes out of the floodplain, those homes now become eligible for these intercog programs and these HUD programs to upgrade them. So whether it's siding, windows, furnace and HVAC, anything like that, we have a big chunk of our historic part of town that will now be eligible for these programs. And I know there are other parts of town that aren't in the floodplain that are eligible that we've helped in the past. So this is something that staff will look at going back and accessing this program again as an option for our homeowners. Dog park, we just talked about this tonight. And so we're just showing the about $117,000 and then expenses over the next 2 years of that amount. So we zero that out. And again, I know Mr. Weigel was talking about fencing and costs, and I think that's something we want to look at because this is over half a mile of 6-foot tall cyclone or chain link fencing. So it's a good amount. And the trade-off will be bathrooms, amenities, other things like that. What do we think we can fundraise in addition? And then the overall aesthetics and use of the park. Airport runway recon, reconstruction. Again, there you had an item on the agenda tonight in the consent agenda for some design work on this. This isn't the extension. This is just kind of ripping up and replacing what's there and adding about 10 feet in width. So this is the project that's not, I'll say not as property acquisition dependent. The FAA still wants that safety zone, but this is fixing what's there right now. And you can see the funding there again is mostly federal funds and then some bond proceeds that is in the TIF district. So those are TIF funds out of the urban renewal area. And then the expenses are broken down below, again, showing that we're not going to maintain any cash balance there.
And does that include all of the work that we were required to do for the safety?
No, no,
Okay.
that's only restoring the condition of the existing runway.
Okay.
Here's land acquisition. This does talk about the safety zone, and so this would include the farm fields and the property, the easements, the land, trees, the Miller site in these numbers here.
Okay.
So this is where we talk about kind of timing of land purchases, and we'll be discussing more with council coming up on that, just for status updates and some council direction at the next meeting. GMT Rail Spur, we wrapped that up, just to show you that's done. That was a somewhat of a unique economic development agreement where we actually built infrastructure. Usually they're tax rebates or jobs dollars, and this one was actually helping to build a rail spur. Here's city bridge projects. This is what I was talking about a little bit earlier. So you can see that we really have been transferring in and building up a cash balance, but it's not enough to do a major painting or coating. It's not enough to do something big, but depending on how reports come back, it could be replace some of the gusset plates or enhance something. I'm not a bridge engineer, so I'll just put that line of talking right now. But I think the real discussion is what's the future of that, especially knowing that we're sitting on a little bit of money there. Second Avenue Southwest reconstruction. This is, again, that project that's really going to be kind of a hurry up and get going project there from 4th to the 10th Street over by the north entrance to the hospital. Public services just shows basically that the majority of the money is there. You'll see a little bit when we get to the end. There's a little bit of some timing nuances where bonds are sold in a calendar year and projects are expensed in a fiscal year. So that's why you'll see that some, like in this year, 2014, our revenues look huge, and in 2016, our expenses look big, but our revenues look small. And a lot of that is because we're selling the bonds in between now and May for projects that'll start really going in July, August, September. Thankfully, we have a lot of these CDBG buyout, flood buyout programs that are done, and emergency demolition programs that are done. South Industrial Park, this is just something to show. This was our fund for acquisition and development of the industrial park where GMT and Farmer AgVantage and People's Insurance is located. We basically call this our economic development fund. So there's a little over $750,000 here. This money is from the sale of the Nabel building to Goodwill. So the Goodwill building there, that's where this money came from. We like to have it in case there's an opportunity to buy some land or do a cash match or something like that. So that's why that is we look at that basically as a reserved economic development fund. Parkway, as we talked about earlier tonight, we need to finish that up this spring. You can see kind of where the money flowed from bonds last year and expenses this year. And then finally, Aquatic Center Phase 1 of the $700,000 and some odd there. That project, I think, is, Tab, what's the timeline of that? Now through May?
Right, yeah, May 22nd is the end. They won't start February 16th.
So February through May, so that's why they'll be all wrapped up this fiscal year and you don't see anything next fiscal year. So those are the projects. Again, kind of an overview. Hopefully, aside from Dan, most should be pretty familiar with them because we talk about them, and I know Dan will get familiar with them as we continue to talk about them as they come up at least monthly as we do status updates and project updates. So any questions on that? Comments?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, God.
We needed some kind of a head nod on whether we wanted to sell an additional 250 sidewalks or 500 and.
So yeah, that's a good point. And I think
Right now, we're funding it about half the level that we normally would fund it at, right?
we don't,
With that transfer.
yeah, we're doing the transfer, but we don't have additional debt issuance in like 15,
Right.
16, and 16,
Yep.
17. So, and I don't have it right in front of me, and Jack, you might, the analysis, but basically, what we've found is if we want to go ahead and package 2 years, is it 2 years worth of bonds in the dry run bonds, we can do that, and we have enough cash in the debt service fund to keep that levy rate where we've been talking about it. and not have it go up these first 2 years. Because if you remember, for our debt service levy, 16, 17, 15, 16, and 16, 17, it went above that 230 mark. And then it drops off pretty quick in 16, whatever, the 2 years after that. So what we can do is we can issue the debt now, and we basically use cash to offset those first 2 years, and then it can come back into the levy rate after that, so that we don't spike the rate, we just kind of keep it flat. That way it keeps the program going, it uses some reserves on hand, and we don't get behind in our rotation. That's one option. Another option is to say, well, we don't want to use the cash on hand, let's just wait and see what the bonds do, or the bids do Thursday, and if we can fit it in, great, and if we can't, then we're not going to do it. A third option would be just put them on or put on 1 year and not 2, and then we'll see what happens. So we think the best would probably be, well, you could wait and see what happens, or you could just plan on issuing them. If we get better bids, great, that just saves us even more. And if we don't, we know that we can keep the rate consistent over the next 2 years, and then it'll be built in going forward.
Seems like, I mean, I know we have a little bit of time, but since we're gonna get the bid for the dry run, and if that would come in 500,000 less, then we don't have much problem, but
Right.
we could maybe plan for it, but we'll have enough time here to decide whether we really wanna
Do it or not.
because we're getting the bids on Thursday. So, I mean, to me, it's kinda hard to make a decision.
Until we see the
knowing
bids.
that on Thursday, we're getting this bid for
PFM
$11
needs to
million.
know, though, because they're putting together all these documents and getting everything, you know.
I guess my gut feeling on this, or my preference on this, would be to not delay the sidewalk project, because we've already kind of spread it out over 7 years from the original 4 that we'd talked about, and so I think keeping it going in some way, obviously, the ideal would be if the bids come in low enough on the
Right.
dry run that we're able to squeeze that in as well. But if we've got another way to get that in without impacting the levy rate, then
Right.
I would be in favor of looking at it that way, so that we can continue the program on the current pace as it is.
It's not a lot of money. I think we were talking about 3 cents or,
And we could
6
do
cents.
250 instead of the 500 and
Right.
get us through another.
either way. The one thing we were trying to avoid was issuing debt every year, especially if we don't have a lot of projects in a year. It's just more economical to bundle it. And so that's why we like to issue a couple of years at once. But what we could do, after this meeting, we'll send out the exact amount, because I know we have it in an email somewhere that says, here's how much money you need to do this. If you bundle it all together, here's what the levy rate means for every $250,000, knowing that in total, nobody would see the impact. So we can send that out. I think what we may do is say, let's try to fit them in there, and here's what it would take to do it.
I agree. I mean, I think stick it in there. My only concern would be is what if the bids come in over budget, then that would be something we
need to pull back out.
I mean, it's,
And the other thing we may do if they do come in, let's say they come in $500,000 over budget, is, okay, well, that sidewalk money just went to the dry run. And so now we're just gonna have to wait on sidewalks, because that's the highest priority. And that additional 500,000, we'll issue it in 17, 18.
yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
I guess the only concern I would have is when you start borrowing money 2 years in advance, does it really, I mean, you're paying interest on that, are you really coming out ahead? I think the information we've gotten back says it does, but it's still uncomfortable, I guess, borrowing
Right.
money before you need it. And
Right.
Any more discussion? I would entertain a motion to set the
Well,
public hearing.
we have a
date.
few more to go through, sorry. Sometimes when you ask for the time, we tell you how to build a grandfather clock, so we're working on that, though. I think we had solid waste and airport to go through, and then just the final wrap-up. So, Mike, I don't know if you want to go through solid waste, or if you want me to go through it quickly. I don't want to steal your thunder.
Go for it.
That's right.
Commercial commercial garbage truck we're looking at replacing. Otherwise, everything's pretty customary.
Yeah, so as Mike was saying, looking at replacing a commercial truck, which is our standard rear loading trucks that you'll see running the commercial and commercial cardboard routes. One of the things we are, based on council feedback, looking at doing is July 1 going to a bi-weekly pickup of yellow lids and recycling, adding 4 days a year. Now, as we've talked about, it's kind of an impact to scheduling, but we think that the offset is that it's a better impact to customer service and just kind of remembering and planning. Another thing that we will want to talk with council out to get on some direction on is our recycling program. As we continue to review that and look at the bins, the 35, 65, 95 gallon bins versus the totes, and how many totes and how often the totes and that kind of thing. So that's not a discussion for tonight, but that's just a heads up as far as our systems and processes continue to evolve. But we did hear the feedback on the yellow lids, and so I think that's something we're going to try to implement in the fiscal year. The other thing is you'll see that fund will change, and it won't necessarily show it all in the numbers tonight, but over the last year, there's been quite a bit of an expense with simply purchasing the bins and the freight associated with them. And I know Brian can attest to that, and Mike with their POs, that it's not a cheap endeavor, especially to ship those things. But we feel like we're getting to a good saturation point. Of course, we've gotten there with the trash, but now we're continuing to work there on the recycling. That also is a fund. It's an enterprise fund, so it's fully self-funded through user fees, and that has continued to get healthier over time. I think by going to the citywide bins, the current recycling program, I think that Mike and Brian have done a good job of making that a sustainable fund. Anything else, Mike?
Good.
Okay. Small adjustment proposed on rates there, 50 cents from year to year on the cans. Sticker fees are proposed to stay at the $2. The airport, one of the things about purchasing land is that gives us more cash income at the airport. And so you'll notice that the only thing I really want to show at the airport is that the general fund transfer is going from about $18,000 to projected $9,000. So we're reducing that general fund contribution to the airport operations due to having more land that's now rented and cash rent coming in as income. We're also, we passed a resolution of council a while back that allows us to lease land for hangar construction out there to try to get more activity and more people to base their aircraft there. Included in your budget is that 5-year pre-application for capital projects that we went through about a month and a half ago. The funds, we are partially self-insured, and so we maintain a fund for that. Right now, that's about $1 million annual fund as far as revenue off of premiums and expenses for medical coverage. We do maintain a fund balance in there. Right now, we have about $220,000 in there, and that helps us cover when somebody might go from single to family coverage, adding children or adding other major events like that. We also are fully self-insured on dental and vision, and so you'll see that those funds are about stable as they have been in the past. I think we're trying to get those to be closer matched to where we need to keep a appropriate fund balance, being that we're self-insured and not essentially overcharge employees or undercharge employees for the service that are provided. Finally, I want to show Jack's great charts. And these are what I was talking about a little bit with the timing of expenditures and revenue. So for the year, this is just kind of what we call our at a glance. For the year next year, we're projecting our revenues to be about $19 million. And that's kind of a handy number to tuck away. What's the size of your budget? How big are you? We're about 70 full-time employees, and we're about $20 million budget. You'll see a little over a quarter of our revenue comes from property taxes, and then we kind of break down into our enterprise funds. So you can see the numbers, so I don't need to read them to you, but it's just kind of a good breakdown that we're fairly well balanced as far as operations and revenues go. Local option hotel tax, we've talked a lot about that lately, and road use tax, that's been in the news with the proposed 10% 10 cent adjustment to that. We have our TIF revenues and intergovernmental. Then when we look at expenditures this upcoming year, again, I said it would be a little, we have a balanced budget, but we're showing $19 million in and $25.5 million out. Again, that's because we're selling a lot of bonds, $7-8 million in bonds now in this fiscal year that we'll spend next fiscal year. And 41% of what we're going to be doing next year is capital projects. So it's kind of a big year. A lot of these we've been talking about for decades, and it's just kind of all coming to a head at once. And so Mike and I have said either we'll be celebrated in a parade or marched out of town in a parade, one of the two after the end of next summer, and we'll just have to wait and see. Hopefully neither, because neither one of us like that very much. But you can see we have some debt service here, and then our operations are over here in these smaller chunks here. So those are just kind of at a glance. We spent some time talking on this. Tonight, we're just asking to set the public hearing. We have to have a public hearing on the budget, especially the tax levy rate. We have used the backfill to set aside some money and to also fund some things. So we're proposing a tax levy rate decrease of about 10 cents from $14.15 down to $14.05. This doesn't fully offset the rollback for residential property, but it offsets about a third of it. So it will help that. And for commercial and industrial, it'll be even additional property tax relief for them compared to what they've already experienced. So any questions on anything? That's a lot here. Dan, just see me afterwards and we'll go through it all again, right? Yeah. Multiple choice test.
Tomorrow, right?
Yep.
He got to miss the 6 hours worth of this every Saturday.
What do you mean got to miss it? I take a little exception.
Thank you. Motion would be in order.
Yep. I would move to set the public hearing date for the 2015-2016 fiscal year budget for February 16th, 2015 at 7 p.m. here in the Ivan Ike Ackerman Council Chambers.
Been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Council discussion. All in favor signify with yes.
Yes.
Opposed with no. Unanimously approved. Thank you. Regular business item number 3 is the purchase of 3 Interceptor utility vehicles for our police department. I think we need some city administrator comments.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. We have discussed the vehicle adoption and change as part of the budget. And we're asking tonight, because the money actually is sitting in the local option sales tax funds for this, approval of ordering these. And the reason for that is that we can, we're up against the timeline with Ford so that these can be ordered in this current model year, which is cheaper than next model year. The delivery will take place after July 1, so it will be in the 15-16 fiscal year. But we're just seeking council's approval at this time to go ahead and place our order with, I believe it's Stivers Ford out of Waukee, who has the state bid. So we're going off a state bid for this.
Okay.
And this dollar amount represents the vehicle purchase, and then there'll be an additional contract for the upfit.
Let's do discussion after motion. Motion, please.
Move approval of purchase of 3 2015 Ford Police Interceptor utility vehicles for $73,092 for the requested delivery of July 2015.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion second. Council discussion.
I just have a question because this is the first time for me with this kind of agenda item. What's the difference between a state bid and any other bid?
So the state will,
Oh,
She took my question.
the state will annually go out to bid on everything ranging from John Deere Gators to international snowplows and all equipment in between. And so what that does is that gives basically all governmental entities a chance to get the purchasing power of mass quantities across the state. So if we can find something that fits our specifications on the state bid, it's usually a good way to go. But that doesn't always work for all applications or all equipment. The other downside to the state bid is it's difficult for our local dealers to get on the bid just due to the volume and pricing. And sometimes they'll honor these prices and sometimes they just can't do that. So in this instance, when we're doing multiple vehicles, we try to go a state bid. But if we're just doing a pickup truck, you'll see oftentimes that'll come from a Coonrad or a Rolling or something like that.
So do we check with them before making the decision whether they are willing to match it or not?
I don't think we have with this one because of maybe we have. Rich?
Yeah, one of the other differences is these ones we're ordering are pursuit authorized. They're law enforcement vehicles, so they're different. Where other departments in the city, the vehicles are made that you could use it privately as well. These are a specific order. I did the first few years of being as in chief, I did check locally, and quite honestly, just told me we can't compete with it. So
Okay.
I've stopped checking over the years.
Thank you.
My recollection, I think it's typically been our police vehicles that have been the state bids that we've gone for, and most of everything else is local or, so. We can customize them a little bit better for our local ones, but the police vehicles have that added.
One question I have, and I get sometimes from the public, but this actually says for delivery. Does that mean they'll be delivered to us, or does that mean we have to go pick them up? How does that work? And I've been asked that sometimes before, how it might be cheaper to have them actually delivered here, and sometimes we send people to go pick them up and kind of waste a day driving. But I don't know how that
We
works.
just went through that with a vehicle. Was that the van or something that we paid to have it delivered because it was cheaper? Do you recall? I should just look across the way. Carla, do you recall that? My brain's a little.
It was a couple $100.
$50.
It wasn't huge. But I don't know how it is when you're talking 3 vehicles either.
I'd volunteer to go down and drive that. The police vehicle? Great, wouldn't it be, Wes? You and I could go down.
If I got paid to do
I'm
it.
in too.
I've never asked what the price would be for delivery locally. What we do is usually get 4 guys to volunteer to come in, and so they're not paid.
Okay.
Some guys enjoy just going down there and picking up the new vehicles.
That's the question I usually get. Is,
Driving them home in formation.
yeah. That's the question I get is people, if they know we're getting them from Des Moines or wherever,
Yep.
they'll notice, 3 police officers going down, 3 police officers going back, and they wonder if they're getting paid for that just to deliver a car, but it's all volunteer, as you say.
Yep.
Yeah, that, with newspaper coverage, that would be dramatic. Public input before we vote.
But you wish you had these the last couple of days.
All in favor signify with yes.
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 Opposed with no. Purchase will be made. Mayoral appointments. I reappoint Sharon Cashman to Leisure Services and also appoint Derek Solheim, new to that commission. Discussion amongst council.
Is that commission going to be full? Like, is that full then? Or I can't remember
It is
who's.
full. We have people waiting also, qualified people.
That's nice.
So we're rocking and rolling. Other discussion? Motion be in order.
Move approval of the mayoral appointments.
Second.
All in favor signify with yes.
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 Opposed with no. Unanimously approved. Thank you. Next, we have reports from boards and commissions. We have the Economic Development Commission minutes from January 13th. And any comments from that dramatic meeting? Officially received. We received the Senior Center calendar. Any comments on the senior citizen calendar and all they're up to? saluting their Valentine effort. Officially received staff comments, please.
Just a few. The staff will be out early tomorrow morning removing the windrows from the business district downtown. There's a study session at the end of this week, and then a Waverly Light and Power Board meeting, Waverly Communications Board meeting next week to determine the future of the fiber system, communication system. The town and the county was recognized as the third connected community in the state on Friday by local, state, and national officials, and so that's a great, I think, feather in the cap of Bremer County and all the communities in Bremer County that were recognized as the ability to provide vast internet, broadband connectivity and services to people. Citizens Academy kicks off Thursday night, so that'll be exciting. Rich, what class is this? How many? Sixth class. Okay. Good.
First of six.
Okay.
Yes.
The downtown apartments are now under construction. You'll see some construction zone signs there, and so that's good that that's moving ahead and progress is being made there. There's a Champions Ridge meeting tomorrow night at 6:30 at the library, and March 20th is the first day of spring, so. And also, just as Mike was talking about, the interest rate on a AA, AAA 10-year bond today fell another 5 basis points to 1.85%. So that's what government bonds are going for right now. That's pretty good.
Yeah. Thank you for staff comments. City Council comments. Let's start on my left.
I'm good.
Abe, small time.
I would just say thank you for all the great snow removal in the last few days. Thank you.
Neindorf,
I'm good.
Kangas.
I was just gonna again pass on thanks, Brian, pass on our thanks to the crews for the work they've been doing, getting the roads clear as best they can, and gets to be some long hours, and it's really appreciated.
Yep, the city keeps moving. Am I right? Let's start with Dan, and we'll finish up with Dan.
Again, just kind of that annual plug for adopting a fire hydrant. I know that the city does a good job of trying to not cover them up, but they have to go somewhere with the snow. So if you've got one on your property, please dig it out so we can get to it. Just a reminder that the Hawkeye referendum for Hawkeye Community College is tomorrow. So they would appreciate your support there. And I think voting is here at the Civic Center. So that's all on my list.
Okay. Mr. Dan Lampy, any comments?
No. I'm good, yes.
We have a guest, Mr. Jeff. Good to have you here and participating with your presence. Let's be careful, public, as we drive around Waverly. There's a lot of slippery spots. We have pedestrians downtown to watch for, and we have to keep growing into being aware of pedestrians and the stoplights, so please watch all of that. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So
Move we adjourned.
Second,
Second.
motion and second, all in favor signify with yes.
Yes.
Opposed with no, we are adjourned.